Caroline, it's such an honor to have you here with us today. We're so excited to be hearing more about your journey from now to beyond. I think you've been doing amazing things at Levo, so we're really excited to be here and listening to what you have to share with our audience.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, and happy to be here. Happy to have you guys in our office over in Union Square and share some of the things that we've learned throughout this journey.
So I was wondering if you could share with our audience what you've been doing from college to now. It sounds like you've had such an interesting path towards founding Levo, and we'd love to hear more about the milestones.
Yeah, that sounds good. So my experience in a nutshell, I went to Stanford University. I was the first woman in my family to go to college, so that was a really big part of what has changed my perspective on leadership and on professional development for millennials. And I graduated from Stanford, started to work at McKinsey & Company. Really wanted to go somewhere where I was going to be able to refine that basic toolkit I would need in my career. So I wanted to be able to build a business model, build a financial model, understand how to have a conversation in a high-stakes scenario with stakeholders who were a lot more senior than me. So it was really the right place for me to learn that. So moved to New York, started working there, and I'd say about 2.5 years into it, realized that there was a definite difference in how some of my peers were interacting with their first few years in the workforce, right? There was a gender difference and there was a generational difference. I think about it as two different layers. So from a generational standpoint, because that one's a little more holistic, one of the things that I was observing is that basically as millennials, right? So millennials, everyone's always asking what the boundaries are. So millennials are roughly 18 to 35, and the generation prior to us, to the two of us, is basically Gen X, and then the generation coming behind us is Gen Z. So we're Gen Y or millennials, and that's significant because we're the first digital native generation, meaning we're the first generation who's grown up with technology in our hands. We are very comfortable building relationships virtually, and that actually makes a big difference when we hit the workforce with a different set of expectations. So I was starting to observe that there was a generational disconnect between the folks coming in from college into the workforce for the first time in this 10 years. And then there's a gender disconnect with some of the, I'd say, women that I had graduated with being increasingly disoriented or overwhelmed by those first 10 years in that transition. And a lot of the feedback that I would hear was very consistent. It was two things. What should I be doing with my life, right? So I want to see career paths. I want to see examples of people who are role models who I can reverse engineer and become like. I want to see assessments of my leadership talents, and I want to see how that maps to career paths I should have. Any guidance would be helpful because I'm not getting it from people in my life, and I definitely didn't get it from a college program. And if you did, God bless you. I did not. I don't know very many people who did from their career service program. So there's that piece, and then the second piece was I'm lonely, right? I'm coming into the big bad world from an environment that was a lot more insular, right? An academic environment where I could see my friends and my mentors and my professors and all the people in my ecosystem frequently. They were supportive of me. There was about as fair as an environment as you're going to get. It's not perfect, but there are objective grades, and you kind of know what you need to do to go from A, B, C, to D. Yeah. And you put in your effort accordingly. So going from that to an environment where they were working significant hours, not really sure how to transition their college alumni network into this new network that they know they needed for their careers, not quite sure, hearing around that they needed to basically cultivate a community of mentors. Everyone talks about that. So you need a mentor, you need a panel of advisors, you need X, Y, Z. Then the question becomes, well, how are you supposed to do that, right? If I'm working 80, 100 hours a week in my first job, and I'm working very closely with 4 or 5 people on my team, none of them are in my generation. So where am I building the peer relationship and peer mentorship that I need in order to say, hey, Tiffany, I did this and it was successful, or it really failed, and we're kind of learning from each other as we go. And where am I meeting these fairy job mother mentors who I'm supposed to be cultivating relationships with? So there was a real disconnect, and that really, that I'd say fundamental pain point, series of pain points became the nexus for what has now become Levo, right? So I quit McKinsey, founded Levo, spent a lot of time thinking about what is this going to be? Is this a content solution? Is this a technology solution? Really have concluded that what we're building here is a professional network that's really focused on one demographic and that serves them with the elements they need to be successful in their career, right? So I want you to know that Levo is helping you steer your decisions as you go. So when you're a starter, I wanted to help you nail that job and do well in the interview and build your resume and connect you with resume services in case you want someone who can review that for you and actually line edit with you, right? And once you're done being a starter and you're what we call a transitioner, I want Levo to help you actually find your career path, because that's when you're, who am I? That's your quarter life crisis time. Right? So how can we be the antidote to your quarter life crisis? By saying, well, here are some career assessments that you can take. And these career assessments indicate that you should actually be a lawyer instead of what it is that you're currently doing. And here are 15 other peers like you who took this career assessment who are lawyers who you should speak to in your city. So just becoming really personal about how we're guiding you through technology. So once you've gotten over the hump of being a transitioner and you've figured out, here's what I want to do in my life, and I already have a skill set with which to perform well in that job. So you've gone through the starter phase, you've gone through the transitioner phase, you're what we refer to as an integrator. And that's because your challenge now is, how do I integrate my work in my life? And notice that we don't call them balancers, we call them integrators, because balance to us is a concept that sets you up for failure, right? You cannot just wait to do to finish one part of your life in order to start another. I think that becomes a bigger challenge.
That's a good point.
And we want you to think instead about how you integrate your career with whatever personal life it is that you want to have, however you define success there, and so on and so forth. So as an integrator, your big challenge is that there's no textbook solution to what you're doing, right? So your decisions are actually a matter of cultural debate in this country right now. And there's a lot of opinions. People feeling very comfortable sharing their opinions about what decisions you're making. And so instead of being able to provide you with curriculum or specific content or specific job opportunities the way we could if you were earlier on in your career, what we can provide you with is a community. Because what you need is to sit down with other integrators who have either made their decision or are in the same position as you. So either peers, or we call the peer, who's thinking through this with you, or the mentor who's made the decision you're going to learn from, and determine based on those examples what the right equilibrium is for yourself. And that's really where the community becomes even more important as you grow.
Yeah.
So those are the three stages that we really focus on at Levo. And the idea is that we want to hold your hand in those first critical 10 to 12 years in your career, because the pipeline demonstrates that that's when you see talent go like this and start to meet their potential, or stagnate, or worse even, become discouraged by some of the influences they're seeing in their work environment. It starts really early.
It's so amazing, the solution you've built. It sounds like it's going to be such an inspirational accompaniment for women as they journey throughout their career. And so kudos to you. This is so amazing. And I know,
we hope so.
Yeah, and it's been amazing to see you build a startup from the ground up. Knowing you now for the past couple of years, and having seen what you've done to create your team and build this business, I'd love for you to share with the audience everything you oversee from kind of component to component, sharing the details of your favorite parts of the projects that you work on.
Oh man, we're going to be here a long time. I'll try to keep it short. So the way that I describe my role is very simple. And I always try to use analogies because they help people understand very complicated concepts in a really easy way that you can rally around and then focus on what you want to talk about. So for us, I view a startup as basically an intention to take a train down a specific path. And my role is to walk into an area that has not had train tracks, that has not had a train, that has not had a path, and say, I think that there's an opportunity to go in this direction, and I think that the track should be laid like this, and we're going to build a train that can actually run really effectively on these tracks. And so there's the vision, which is there's an opportunity for us to build a train, move it in this direction, do something really incredible, take people from A to B a way that they haven't been taken before. And for us, the A to B is this current state of anxiety and discontent around your career to fulfilling your professional potential. That's the A to B. So that's the vision part. And so my responsibility is to elucidate the vision, elucidate the values of the company, make sure that the people that we are hiring are aligned with that, right? And make sure that we understand the scope of what that means we should be doing every day. which is the second part. The second part is saying, okay, so here's where we're going to go, and here's where the track should go, and they're going to go in this direction. And every time that we lay a different part of the track down, it's us taking a step in the direction of our strategy. So the CEO and founder's second role is around the actual tactical strategic direction. So one of the things that we do is we use the traction model, meaning that we define for every quarter, here are the 4 or 5 things that have to get done, right? Everything else is a nice to have. Here are the 4 or 5 things that have to get done. Here are the key features, here are the key events, here are the key influencer or partner relationships, here are the key sources of revenue, whatever it might be. And the team knows that that's how they should prioritize their time. So what you said is, here are the next 5 rungs on this track. So the second piece is the strategic direction. And it's everything from setting it to course correcting throughout to make sure that people are actually moving in that direction and that we're measuring against that. And the third piece that I would say is the talent piece, right? So the talent piece is the building of the train and the establishment of who should be on the train, who should be conducting the train, who should be walking up and down the aisles on the train, and so on and so forth, right? Who's responsible for making sure the engine is full, everything. And I'd say the talent piece is the piece that evolves the most, because when you start, you're kind of responsible for everything, right? And that's fun. It's also really tiring in its own way. And then the journey starts to relieve you of specific responsibilities as you carve out roles for people on your team who you trust to manage those things moving forward. So scalability becomes your ability as a founder to actually delineate what needs to get done, give it to someone who's smarter than you, and then let them run with it. So you can go on to the next thing that's a challenge for your business. And letting go of something is not a sign of failure, it's actually a sign of success. Because when you are scaling, you can't possibly do everything, and I see a lot of founders limit themselves because they are uncomfortable delegating responsibility or ownership, but you're gonna limit your business if you do that, right? So that's the third piece. And then oh, by the way, is that part of your job as the CEO is to raise money, right? So you're responsible for making sure that there is the raw materials with which to build the track, with which to build the train, with which to get people on the train, with which to feed and clothe and whatever them, right, are coming from somewhere. So you're responsible for selling that vision and that strategy to a group of people who say, you know what, I believe that you're actually going from point A to point B, and I'm going to invest in you and bet that you are. And by virtue of making that bet, I'm going to make it possible for you to do that. So those are the, I'd say, 4 responsibilities, but on a day-to-day basis, you're not fundraising, right? So it's on a day-to-day basis more of the 3 that I just mentioned.
It's amazing. And what are some of the most exciting things you're working on right now?
Oh, so we have a lot in the pipeline. We have a completely new product that we're working towards. Basically, for us, we believe that if Levo today is what I would refer to as a menu of career resources, what Levo tomorrow can become is a very personalized experience for each member. And from a technology standpoint, that requires a lot of building. So it means that I need to know where you are, who you are, what you like, and so I need to be able to recommend to you who you should be meeting as a mentor, who you should be meeting as a peer, and so on and so forth. So I'd say that's the big story arc for us from a product standpoint. From a content standpoint, what we want to start doing more of is making sure that we're covering all of the industries that we want to be covering so that we're not alienating any kind of careerist. We don't want you to come to Levo and be really well served by content, curriculum, mentors, etc. if you're in the client services industry, since we use that as an example, but not feel that way if you are a graphic designer. So we need to make sure that all the industries are covered and that we're bringing in leaders from across industries to share their insight. So that's something that we're working on. We're working on a few celebrity lineups for office hours, continuing that long-standing tradition that we've had with everyone from Warren Buffett to the VP of Creative at Oscar de la Renta. So we want to be able to move forward in that direction and keep that as a mainstay of the brand. And the third piece for us is really starting to think about what are we proving that we can solve with these organizations that we're working with, right? So our business model derives from us working with innovative companies that want to do one of 2 things. They either want to make sure that they're recruiting and retaining millennials more effectively, because this is, and not to be doomsday, everybody's talking about it, so let's just put the numbers on the table, This is the least retainable generation that's ever existed and the largest one to hit the workforce. So by 2020, millennials are going to be 50% of the workforce, and they want to stay at companies less than a year and a half. So if you're in a position of leadership at a company, you're going, oh man, that's not a good combination of factors, right? I got to figure out how to get ahead of this so that I, as a business, can thrive with my next generation of talent. That's internally. And the same concept applies externally. So if you're selling to these millennials, then you better know that they care about purpose, they care about the impact of your organization, they care about the double bottom line, they care about the transparency with which you communicate. All those things are really important to you, and if you haven't shifted the way that you are as a business to suit them, then it's not a fad, it's not going away, right? You're not going to stay innovative, you're not going to stay ahead of the curve. And by the way, Gen Z, who's coming up behind us, is equally adamant about these things. So we're not a blip. We're actually the tip of the spear of a completely new paradigm. So I want to make sure that we're continuing to scale some successful examples of working with organizations that are innovative about these things and show with data how successful they've been in moving the needle. And that's something that we're doing with internal benchmarking and starting to think about how can we certify businesses that are actually doing a great job with this cohort, right? Is there a Levo certification in the future? These are a lot of the things we're thinking about right now.
It's so exciting. Sounds like you're onto some amazing endeavors and making some really exciting initiatives. So thank you again for sharing all of this information with us and your journey. It's been really amazing to hear, and we're excited to share it with Forbes and Mobile.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to answer any other questions on my mentor profile, which is part of the reason it's there, and just make sure that we're being transparent about this journey, because there's no reason that you and I have to go up different learning curves. It just makes no sense whatsoever. We should be learning from each other. We should be avoiding each other's mistakes. We should be transparent about that process, and that's something I'm really committed to.